that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Making some adjustments as it stands in my apartment. Maybe we'll get stuff in the back here eventually. I don't know. I guess we'll see. You may also hear trains from time to time. Coffee. I really don't have too much to say here. But this is a long book, and I decided I would do thoughts as I make my way through it. Mostly so I could have videos continually throughout the month, because I knew this would really stump me and stop me in my tracks. So, today we are talking about Don Quixote by Cervantes. Don Quixote is non-spoiler wise. I mean, there's not really spoilers to be had. I would say Don Quixote is one of those novels you can really only experience. It doesn't really matter what you know about it. It's not going to really ruin it for you if you do know about it. But Don Quixote is a man who wishes to be a knight and is going around places trying to help individuals. Alongside him is his companion and squire, Sancho Panza. And essentially they get into a bunch of different scenarios, and this will continue as I read more of the book. But as it stands, Don Quixote doesn't seem to be all there, technically speaking, at least in terms of reality. But at the same time, he brings a lot of wisdom to the table as well. So there's a lot of a catch-22 there with this character. And Sancho Panza is sort of his foil as his, maybe rationality to his whimsical thought process. So a lot of fun to be had there. I'll say Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are very much the duo of fiction. This was written around the same time as Shakespeare, for instance, right? So if you think about any character, any two duos in fiction, you got Batman and Robin, I guess, for one. For people my age, there was a cartoon back in the day called Adventure Time, Jake and Finn. There's a lot of those same things going on there, of different duos and dynamics and characters, or Ikaria Mappo from the Malazan Book of the Fallen for my fantasy friends, a lot of that sort of duo dynamic, in some way, shape, or form, can all originate back to this spot here with this book. But as I said, these are kind of update videos, as I'm call this a thoughts, not a review, because I'm only 200 pages into the work. The work is close to 1,000 pages, so of course this is not going to be my entire thoughts upon the book as a whole, so you're not going to get that here. But as this is the start of it, I thought I would give my kind of non-spoiler thoughts on these opening parts. Of course, if you come into any of the next videos until the end, there's going to be inherent spoilers within it, because it'll be in the middle of the work, so maybe don't watch those. But as for this one, it's a long work, and I think it also really depends on the translation you get that would determine whether you enjoy it or not. The one I picked up was by Edith Grossman, who translated this one, where she very much tries to keep the prose that Cervantes had, but in English. Other people make a more straight-to-straight translation of the text, which English is a tricky language, and whenever you try to translate another language into English, if you do a one-to-one direct translation, it may be more accurate in terms of maybe certain words and phrases, but it won't flow well when you read it. It won't sound beautiful. Sort of a similar thing with like the ESV translation of the Bible. It's pretty much one-to-one for the most part, but that can make a couple things seem kind of funky here or there. Whereas if you read other versions, it's gonna flow better, it's gonna sound better, but it may not be as accurate to the text. So this one, as far as I'm aware, remains fairly faithful to the original text, but allows some artistic expression for the prose to align with what Cervantes would have actually been going for. So I think that is a nice little synergy there. I don't know if I'd appreciate this story as much if it was a different translation, so I'm glad I went with the one I got. Plus, I had an introduction that was fantastic to read about by the late and great Harold Bloom. I know people can often find that man pretentious, and perhaps he is to an extent, but you cannot deny the love of literature that that man had, and every time he speaks about something positively into the hemisphere of literature, it elevates it to the highest extent. And so it definitely was nice to have his thoughts of this prior to actually reading this story. That being said, I also don't want to sit here and lie to all of you in terms of, like, I'm not sitting here absolutely loving that. It's not like I can't put it down. Like, it does to an extent, at least at this far into it, feel a bit like homework, enjoyable homework, but homework. It's not something that I would necessarily pick up out of the blue if I didn't already have an interest in literature and some of the classics that I've been meaning to kick off my bucket list. I'm hoping by the end of it, I'll be like, no, this is like one of my favorite works of all time. As it stands, it's really solid, though. I'm not, again, it's not something I would have just picked up to read if I didn't already have a vested interest in kind of reading some of these classics. But that being said, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable experience. Some of the sort of conscious thoughts that I was having going through this, without very minor spoilers. I'll get into spoilers later as I have some excerpts to share. Don Quixote. He must be a little insane, right? Because he thinks that windmills are giants. He thinks that sorcerers are attacking him. He mistakes prostitutes for princesses. Every time he gets into a situation, at least so far, it's gone relatively negatively for him. Whether he gets beat up, or Sancho gets beat up, or this or that. But there's an earnestness to the desire to do right by people in a time where knights don't really exist anymore. And actually, at the time of recording this, of course, by the time you're seeing this, we're going to be nearing the end of 2026. But the adaptation of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms with Dunk and Egg, the George R. R. Martin spin-off book and show of the Game of Thrones universe, has a very similar sort of dynamic there. You would think George R. R. Martin, maybe he said this before, I haven't done my research, has said that, Don Quixote had to be some sort of inspiration there, because you have a similar sort of feel, not the exact same, of course, but there's this sort of... Dunk is clearly not a knight as in the fables of old, but there's this earnestness and this desire within Dunk to do good, to do right, to be just, to be honorable in a time, in a place where many aren't. And so there is a sort of beautiful truth to Don Quixote, and that he wishes to accomplish that, even if the results that we've seen, at least so far in this book, have not been to that standard, I guess. Also, I just love, and these are just things that pass by my mind as I read it, that's not really relevant to the text, really talked about in the text, but I think most of us can relate to the fact that most of us work a 9 to 5, or for me, 10 to 7. Most of my day, like, I'm recording this. What time is it right now? It is 7:27. Okay. And I have to go to work. I'm going to leave around 9:30. I'm going to get there around 10. I'm going to start doing my job. I'm not going to leave till about 7. Then I got to drive home. I'm going to work out because I don't want to get fat, and I get very conscious about that. Maybe play a video game or read for an hour. And then I'm going to sleep, rinse, and repeat. That is my life. And You know, I'm not like a communist or super capitalist. Like, I don't really care about any of that. I'm not big enough to fix any of those things anyway. But there is something to be said just on a higher foundational level, like whether you live in China or you live in Russia or you live in America or you live this way or you live that way. That's not a proper way to say that, but I did that on purpose. We all kind of just are born, and we kind of just we live life, and we kind of just accept certain things and just go about it. But we work all of our lives, or maybe not in every country, but in a lot of places we work all our lives so that we can retire, enjoy old age when you're aching and breaking and tearing apart and can't fully appreciate it and enjoy that. And by old age, I'm talking like 70, 80, 90, okay? If you're 50, you're not old. If you're 60, you're not old, okay? I work with old people, and they're great people, but that's the difference, okay? Um, so if you're in your 50s or 60s, I'm not calling you old. And even if you are old, it's not a problem. It's not a bad thing. But it is to say, like, life is winding down when you get to that stage. And why should that only be the time that you actually get to enjoy and live life? There's no adventure. There's no joy. There's no. I mean, you have to make it yourself, right? You got to go and travel and do all this and that, but you have to plan that. You have to time that. You have to take time off of work. You have to do this. You have to do that. You know, and I understand that that's just a part of being an adult, but the fundamental thing is why? Why must that be the way that it is? And there's this beauty, this magical thing about the past. And by that I mean like the Wild West before that, like back here, where government couldn't really particularly always keep track of you. Like in the Old West, like you could do whatever. Like there's no way to there's no cameras, there's no social security to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. There was a freedom to that. And so for Don Quixote to just be like, I'm gonna up and leave. I'm gonna go travel wherever and help wherever I can, meeting new peoples, going to new locations every single day. There is a sort of intrinsic. Uh, there's something about that the traveling journeyman, the adventurer that is appealing to all of us. That's why so many of us enjoy fantasy or Star Trek with let's go travel new worlds and see new civilizations, the final frontier. You know, that's that freedom that doesn't really exist in our modern day, and hasn't for long before I was born. 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, go down the line. It hasn't been that way since maybe the last time would have been the Wild West, so the 1800s, somewhere there. And even then, it was already dying out. So it was just something that came to mind as I thought about as Don Quixote asked Sancho Panza to leave his wife and kids and just come with him on adventures. And I don't know, there's something about that. So something deeper that kind of just perpetrated in the back of my mind that, again, the text isn't necessarily talking about, but it's something that I was thinking about at the time I was going through it, which might have something to do more with my mental state and place in life than just with the text itself, but I thought I'd share it with you because I thought it was a bit deeper and a bit more interesting. But I'm enjoying my time with Don Quixote. It is an interesting thing. I really enjoy listening to Sancho Panza and Don Quixote talk about things and the different shenanigans they get into. I don't necessarily see where it's leading to or necessarily the ultimate theme and purpose of the work at this time, but I am enjoying my time with it. And do I recommend it to you just based off of those 200 pages? Absolutely. And now in the next preceding videos, I probably won't have a non-spoiler section because, or at least it'll be a non-spoiler for that portion of the book, but if you haven't read the first 200 pages, then I'll probably, Anyway, point being, probably not safe to watch these videos till you've read it or till I get to the end when I can do just a kind of non-spoiler review of the whole thing, which may hurt views, but that's okay. I never really did this for views anyway. But those are my non-spoiler thoughts. If you don't want any spoilers, well, we'll just say there's the door. It is that direction. It's that direction. Well, it's not there. It's a little bit more that way. But, anyway, yeah. Time to get into some spoilers. With part 1 of Don Quixote. So Sancho Panza is to be the one to help write this whole tale of Don Quixote, and it's his Don Quixote's uncle or something that is writing this tale. So people claim Don Quixote goes a wee bit crazy after he reads a bunch of books about chivalry. Chivalry, yes, and knights in his home. And of course, now Don Quixote wishes to be a knight. But if I can get to my first note here, where's my freaking? There we go. The reason for the unreason to which my reason turns so weakens my reason that with reason I complain of thy beauty. And also when he read, the heavens on high divinely heighten thy divinity with the stars and make the deserving of the deserts thy greatness deserves. With these words and phrases the poor gentleman lost his mind, and he spent sleepless nights trying to understand them and extract their meaning, which Aristotle himself, if he came back to life for only that purpose, would not have been able to decipher or understand. I just love that bit of writing there. It was a lot of fun. Going back to the phone, the truth is that when his mind was completely gone, he had the strangest thought any lunatic in the world ever had, which was that it seemed reasonable and necessary to him, both for the sake of his honor and as a service to the nation, to become a knight-errant and travel the world with his armor and his horse, to seek adventures and engage in everything he had read that knight-errants engaged in, righting all manner of wrongs, and by seizing the opportunity and placing himself in danger, and ending those wrongs, winning eternal renown and everlasting fame. He also gets his horse, which Don Quixote decides to name Rosante. I don't know if this woman is even real, to be real with you, but Don Quixote falls in love or is mesmerized by this Aldonza Lorenzo woman who he admires, and he renames her Dulcinea of Tobosa. Our first adventure with Don Quixote is he tries to help a child who's getting beaten by this man, but instead he goes to the man. The man explains himself, and he's like, "Oh, and he doesn't really help the kid in the long run." And so it was like a failure on his part to do what was right. And then he goes in this other scenario, and he's like, "I'm gonna go save the day," and he immediately gets like beat up. And so it's like, okay. This is also the portion of the book where we learn that Sancho left his wife and kids to be a squire. And we get to part 2 of book 1 of Don Quixote, because there is 2 parts. There's 2 books that were written. There's the first part was written, and then another part that was written 10 years later, which is included in the single volume of Don Quixote, which I forgot to mention earlier. But so this is the next note. Senor, I don't know why your grace wants to embark on this fearful adventure. It's night. Nobody can see us here. We can turn around and get away from the danger, even if we don't drink anything for 3 days. And since there's nobody here to see us, there's nobody to call us cowards. Besides, I've heard the sermons of our village priest, and your grace knows him very well. And he says that whoever goes looking for danger perishes, so it isn't a good idea to tempt God by undertaking something so terrible that you can't get out of it except through some miracle. And heaven has done enough of them for your grace, letting you escape being tossed in the blanket, like I was, letting you come out victorious, free, and unharmed, over so many enemies who were escorting the dead men. And if all this doesn't touch or soften your hard heart, let it be moved by thinking and believing that as soon as your grace has left this place, fear will make me give up my soul to anybody who wants to take it. I left my home and my children and my wife to serve your grace, thinking I would be better off, not worse. But just as greed makes the sack burst, it has torn my hopes apart when they were the brightest for getting that wretched ill-starred insult that your grace has promised me so often. I see that as payment and reward, you want to leave me now in the desolate place, far from all other human beings. By the one God, senor, you must not wrong me so, and if your grace absolutely refuses to think again about embarking on this deed, at least put it off until morning, for the lore I learned when I was a shepherd tells me it's less than 3 hours till dawn, because the mouth of the horn is over my head, and midnight's in line with my left arm. How can you, Sancho, said Don Quixote, see what that line is, or where the mouth of any horn or any head is? If the night is so dark, there is not a single star visible in all the sky. That's true, said Sancho, but fear has many eyes and can see things under the ground, let alone high in the sky. Even so, it stands to reason that it won't be long until daylight. However long it may be, responded Don Quixote, let no one say of me now or ever that tears and pleas turn me from doing what I, as a knight, was obliged to do. And so I beg you, Sancho, to be quiet, for God, who has placed in my heart the desire to embark on this incomparable and most fearsome adventure, will surely look after my well-being and console you in your grief. What you must do is tighten Rocinante's cinches and remain here. I shall soon return, either alive or dead. Fun times. We also have this section where all knights must love, which I thought was a nice little segment as he explains why in order to be a knight you must have a lady that you love somewhere that you can't actually like enjoy those fruits, I guess, as it were. Like you love someone and then you're always away. I thought was a fun little thing. I got more notes. I'm sorry. Hold on. Or before that, I should say, a big, large opening portion of this section, these first 200 pages, again, is a bunch of different scenarios that Sancho and Don Quixote get themselves entrapped in. Of course, in these opening 200 pages, I didn't really talk about it specifically because a lot of people, if they don't know the whole book, they know this particular section. And of course, we have the famous scene where Don Quixote and Sancho come up across some windmills. And Don Quixote is convinced that those are giants. And so he goes to attack one with his lance. And he hits, like the thing that's spinning. And he goes flying around, which is his first step toward misfortune. Which is a really funny little scene there. And again, begins to question Don Quixote's sanity. But there's a lot of wisdom amidst the scatterness of his brain. So it's like, maybe there's some truth to what he's saying. Or maybe the truth is in the perception of reality. Maybe it's not even... Maybe Don Quixote is insane to want to help people day in and day out as a knight errant. But maybe it's equally insane to be kind to people every day. Maybe it's equally insane to be a good person in a world that isn't kind or forgiving or graceful. So maybe it's insane to be kind in general, in a rational world. But maybe your perception is your reality, and maybe no matter what the world tells you, you fight against it and you remain pure-hearted. So maybe there's something to be said about that. Maybe Don Quixote's perception is the truth, but no one's willing to accept it. I don't know. Some early thoughts. But yeah, so we have the windmill scene, and also like the tensions of Don Quixote and Sancho kind of build around these pages, because Sancho was promised riches, rewards for helping be a squire, and they have faced adversity after adversity after adversity with no real positives so far in the story, only negative after negative after negative. So there's been a constant confliction between the two of them. Also, there's these two passages I'm going to read, and this is pretty much the end of this opening thoughts section. But they come upon this dead body with some written letters of a scorned love or whatever. And Sancho's like, well, we've been having a massive failure these last 200 pages. He doesn't say 200 pages, but he's like, why don't we just take his money? I mean, he's dead. He's not using it. And, Don Quixote is like, well, no. Regardless if there's witnesses or not, God would know that we stole it. So we should return it to the next of kin or whoever, And again, like, this is another thing, like, rationally, I mean, yeah, they've got no money, they need to eat, they need to clothe themselves, they need to be able to, restock and everything, so why not just take the money? The guy's not using it, the guy is dead. I don't think anybody would really, like, if you're playing a video game, and you come across a dead body in the forest, and you loot the body, nobody even bats an eye, you just go, like, yeah, that's game logic, you just take it. but she never even considered that maybe she'd give that back to somebody else. But Don Quixote does. He knows that God is watching. So maybe there's something to be said about his version of reality. Maybe that is the more honest, truthful world, even if no one is willing to look at it that way. These are the last two things I have, and we'll call it an episode. The next time you'll see me is around the 400 to 500 page mark. I haven't decided yet, so. From everything you have said to me, dear brothers, I deduce that although you are being punished for your faults, this is when this particular section, Don Quixote comes across a bunch of slaves, and he asks, like prisoners, slaves, and Don Quixote asks the guards, like, why are these people here? And they're like, well, we have documents and stuff, but like, we don't got time to go find all them. So if you want to go ask them, and if they want to answer you, then you can learn their reasons. Most of them aren't seemingly in there for super offensive things. One man really loved his laundry or something like that, and he was, I mean, they don't say he's making love to it, but they say he wouldn't let go of it. So a little weird, but not inherently evil. Another man was writing a book. Another man loved woman a little too much, which, you know, jerk move on his part, but I don't know if that's really deserving of prison time. But essentially all these people are kind of, you know, miscreants at the most. I don't know if they really deserve prison time, but so that's what Don Quixote was getting upset about. And so he says, from everything you have said to me, dear brothers, I deduce that although you are being punished for your faults, the penalties you are about to suffer are not to your liking. And you go to them unwillingly and involuntarily. It might be that the lack of courage this one showed under torture, that one needs of money, another's lack of favor, and finally the twisted judgment of the judge have been the reason for your ruination. For not having justice on your side, all of which is pictured in my mind and is telling, persuading, and even compelling me to show to all of you the reason that heaven put me in the world and made me profess the order of chivalry, which I do profess, and take the vow I took to favor those in need and those oppressed by the powerful, but because I knew that one of the rules of prudence is that we can be done by good means should not be done by bad, I want to ask these gentlemen, the guards and the commissary, to be so good as to unchain you and let you go in peace. There will be no lack of other men to serve the king under better circumstances, for to me it seems harsh to make slaves of those whom God and nature made free. And furthermore, these poor wretches have done nothing against you, gentlemen. Each man must bear his own sin. There is a God in heaven who does not fail to punish the wicked or reward the good. It is not right for honorable men to persecute other men who have not harmed them. I ask this quietly and calmly, because if you comply, I shall have reason to thank you. If you do not comply willingly, this lance and this sword, and the valor of my arm, will force you to comply against your will. And of course, he ends up having to fight all these men. Barely winning that, by the way, but he does do it. So, and then the last thing. It seems to me, said Sancho, that the knights who did these things were provoked and had reason to do senseless things and penances, but what reason does your grace have for going crazy? What lady has scorned you? What signs have you found to tell me that my lady Dulcinea of Tobosa has done anything foolish or moral or Christian? And therein lies the virtue, responded Don Quixote, and the excellence of my enterprise, for a knight errant deserves neither glory nor thanks if he goes mad for a reason. The great achievement is to lose one's reason for no reason, and to let my lady know that if I can do this without cause, what should I not do if there were cause? Moreover, I have more than enough reason because of my long absence from her, who served for my lady Dulcinea of Tobosa, as you heard the shepherd Simbrosio say. All ills are suffered in fear by one who is absent. And so, friend Sancho, do not waste time advising me to abandon so rare, so felicitous, so extraordinary an imitation. Mad I am, and mad I shall remain, until you return with a reply to a letter which I intend to send with you to my lady Dulcinea. And if such as my fidelity warrants, my madness and my penance will come to an end. If it is not, I shall truly go mad and not feel anything. Therefore, no matter her reply, I shall emerge from the struggle and travail in which you leave me, taking pleasure as the same man in the good news you bring, or as a madman, not suffering on account of the bad news you bear. And like I said, a lot of really good quotes like that. But in terms of like the overall plot, I mean, they are kind of just trudging around, getting themselves into different scenarios. There is a Yale course you can find on YouTube that I may leave a link to in the description that will probably give you a better perspective on these books than I can. As I said, I'm a very simple creature. I say this every time we talk about like a really big brain book, like I don't know what I'm talking about. And that remains true here. But I'm enjoying it. Of course, these are just my thoughts. This is not a proper review. These are just my thoughts on the first 200-ish pages that I've read so far. And I'm enjoying it. And I'm curious to see how it all ends, but I like Don Quixote and his squire Sancho Panza, and hopefully you'll join me for the journey if you've read the book before, and if you haven't, understandable. But I'm going to read all of Shakespeare now that I can appreciate it, because I didn't enjoy it in high school, and I think that's true for any child. You know, if for some reason you're watching this because you're in like college and you're reading Cervantes or whatever, like when it comes to Shakespeare and all those things that people force you to read in school, you can't enjoy it. And if you enjoy school, then you'll enjoy it, right? But if you don't particularly love school and somebody tells you that you have to read this thing, then typically you won't enjoy it. And that's the same thing with Shakespeare and Moby Dick and all these other things I had to read for class. I didn't enjoy it. But as an adult, without any pressure to read it in my own accord, my own choice, I find myself really appreciating it now that I'm older. So if you are in school and you're not enjoying it, try to, I don't know, try to enjoy it on its own merits. Try to appreciate it for what it is. I know at the time it doesn't seem easy to do that, but I think there's real worth and merit to these older stories. And Cervantes, Chaucer, Shakespeare, Dickens, Jane Austen. There's a reason we still read these stories. I read Wuthering Heights. Loved it. There's parts I didn't, but I did enjoy it. I really enjoyed Jane Eyre, you know, and I think you can too. You just gotta put yourself in the right headspace. I think reading truly is one of the greatest things I've got myself back into. And I am blessed that I'm able to read this story. So hopefully you'll join me for my thoughts on page 200 to 400-ish. Until then, if you see any windmills, probably don't attack them, okay? Till next time. Bye-bye.